Tonight on The Wrap, the Justice Secretary's personal apology to the family of PC Andrew Harper over the early release of two of his killers. Anger and disbelief among victims and their families after the government confirmed changes to sentencing that will see 5,000 prisoners freed early. Ministers say without action, prisons would be full within months. Also tonight, crisis talk. Sky News understands FIFA boss Gianni Infantino has summoned his senior staff to a meeting in Morocco tomorrow. Shocking footage from Ukraine shows a market seller being hunted by a Russian drone as the air war takes a major turn. And the biggest small boat ever, 173 migrants are rescued from a so-called mega dinghy that capsized in the channel after its engine caught fire. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with the journalist and broadcaster, Sonia Sodha, and the former Culture Secretary, Lord Vaizey. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers coming up in about half an hour's time. Well, a very good evening to you, Sonia and Ed. Welcome to both of you as well. So the row over the early release of prisoners, perhaps the first big test of Andy Burnham's premiership amid real anger from victims and their families. So, Sonia, we've certainly watched the inevitable, predictable backlash today.
Yeah, and it's completely understandable because what you've got are victims' families saying, my relative was killed by this person, you know, who was charged with manslaughter, or, you know, this person was involved in the death of my loved one. Why are they getting off early? Now, ministers would say, we have to do something because otherwise the prisons are going to be full because we simply did not build enough prison spaces in this country over the 14 years that, unfortunately, Ed's party was in government. But it's very, very damaging for victims' families, and I think everyone can understand that.
Ed?
Well, there's a complete lack of transparency because the government's made the right decision to say no rapists, paedophiles or grooming gang members will be released from prison. But this review kicked off because of the public outcry that PC Harper's killers were going to be released. Now they say they can't release them. Why? Why can't we be told what is the technicality that means that they have to be released? Because the Conservatives would say that you could amend the sentencing bill. You could say that anyone involved in a violent offence against an emergency worker shouldn't be released early. What is the government's answer to that? Because Andy Burnham said very clearly he wanted to go further, but he couldn't. Why?
Well, he's on holiday. The questions will be piling up, no doubt. Well, certainly the Justice Secretary apologised to the family of PC Andrew Harper today after confirming changes to sentencing that will see 5,000 prisoners released early. Rapists and child sex offenders are excluded from the plans, as we heard there, designed to tackle a critical shortage of capacity in UK jails. The victims say they are appalled, with PC Harper's widow accusing the government of an utter betrayal. Let's hear more then. Here's Sky's correspondent Molly Malone.
Early release has now been part of prison policy for years, with successive governments lurching from one emergency measure to the next.
Do you think it's right that people are being let out early?
Well, if it helps the situation, then yeah.
As of this year, it became law, and it's here to stay. But the latest plans have been revised to exclude rapists, groomers and those serving sentences for serious child sex offences from being freed early.
It feels like a victory and also a bittersweet moment, really. It felt like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders.
That same relief, though, not being felt by everyone. Tim's daughter Ellie was shot and killed on Christmas Eve in 2022. She was an innocent bystander, caught in the middle of a gang dispute. Her murderer's co-defendant, Thomas Waring, who was sentenced for 9 years for his involvement and assisting an offender, is set to be released early under previous plans.
It was obvious it was a numbers game. It was all about numbers. It makes me angry. It's like he's got away with murder, which he literally has. And it makes a whole mockery of the system.
This review, in part, came about because of public outrage over the case of PC Andrew Harper, who was killed in the line of duty when responding to a burglary in 2019. Two of his killers, convicted of manslaughter, remain eligible for early release. His widow Lizzie calling it an affront to justice, an utter betrayal, and one she won't be able to forgive or to forget.
The consequences of this are, were we not to make these changes, then we would run out of prison places in this October or November. I know that's difficult. I know that's created harm, and that's none of that, it's not Lizzie Harper's fault. And, I'm sorry that she's been put into this situation as a result. I genuinely am.
This is a move that has created division between victims groups, caused uncertainty for an already stretched prison and probation service that now has to recalculate sentences again, and fears that in a rush to make change, mistakes could be made.
Well, there's two things. One is the extent of the work that is envisaged is going to be coming their way. Secondly, is their ability to protect the public to the standards that the public want and we want.
And there is still plenty more to do. A promise to build 14,000 new prison places by 2031, to look at the potential early release of other offenders, like women, and to review controversial indefinite sentences. But this was all supposed to be settled months ago, with new legislation brought in under Keir Starmer. Instead, the sense of injustice and confusion continues. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Well, let's welcome to the studio as well our political correspondent, Lucia McDade. You hear the pain of families, and those are the high-profile cases. Each release brings with it the pain of a victim somewhere, doesn't it? And yet there are real questions now about some of the efficacy of what they're offering instead. For example, tagging is one. The delay by 1 month, September to October. We've heard from governors today suggest they can't even sort out repairs in cells. So there's all sorts of implications for what we've heard from the government.
Yeah, and a reminder, I think, that for those people who didn't want to see Keir Starmer replaced, because they were saying, well, anybody who replaces him will still face exactly the same challenges. I think this is the first real example of that, isn't it? That Andy Burnham is still facing the same crisis, really, in prisons. Molly Malone, who you just heard from there, is actually now reporting tonight that the prison service has triggered an emergency overcrowding measure because of this delay from September to October. So probation officers, prison officers will now have to review out-of-use prison cells, maybe bring them back into service because they're going to need more space to wait until October for that first batch of early releases. You said there about electronic tagging. I mean, part of this press release that we read out on this programme last night from Number 10 was partly Andy Burnham saying, to kind of soften the blow for people, we will introduce even tougher surveillance measures for those prisoners that get let out early. One of those things was electronic tagging. Well, today, the Chief Inspector of Probation is saying that service is not fit for purpose. And if you're going to release 5,000 extra prisoners early, you have to do something about it. Probation officers are stretched. At the moment, when you look at the detail at the moment, what they have to do is go into the system. They have to make a check for any breaches. They aren't alerted to them at the moment. Andy Burnham says that they will be alerted in future. But look, what have they got? A couple of months to sort out a service that's already stretched. Add 5,000 extra people to that they will have to monitor. It's hard to see how that is going to be very effective.
Yes, and on tagging, there was a National Audit Office report as well, wasn't there, where they said nearly 9,000 people in England and Wales who were required to have an electronic monitoring tag appeared not to have one. I know the Ministry of Justice disputed the figures and says it was just over 5,000 or nearly 5,500 people who didn't have one for whatever reason.
Yeah, you're right, and they didn't say it's not happening. They just said the numbers ever so slightly lower.
Yeah, exactly, which is it's
still a big number, isn't it?
So, I mean, what is to be done? I mean, are we going to have this every year, every few months? Well,
I mean, we've got to move away. I mean, this is a microcosm of so much that is wrong at the moment with politics and with public services, if you like, where we are making knee-jerk decisions, and there are kind of three things that need to be done, but they need long-term thinking. First of all, everybody knows the prison estate needs to be completely modernised. I mean, the trouble is, to begin with, that prisons are so way down the political agenda. Nobody is advocating for prisoners. A lot of the public probably want to, lock them up and throw away the keys. So prisons need to be rebuilt. We need to rethink how we sentence and punish people. We have a Victorian system where if you do something wrong, you go to prison. Now, 3,500 prisoners are women. Very, very few of them, like 0.3%, are in prison for violent offences. They're non-violent prisoners. Is there another way to punish them in the community? And will the public have faith in that? And then you have to rethink sentencing. We have by far the highest per capita population of prisoners. in countries like the Netherlands, where they focus on rehabilitation, health issues, mental health issues, drug addiction, they have a far lower prison population and they've reduced crime at the same time. So we have to have a complete rethink. But it has to be, and whether it's Labour or Conservatives, stop the carousel of ministers, put people in for the long term and have a long-term strategy. But I appreciate that is not an answer to the here and now.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels a familiar argument as well. You slash addiction services, you get more people in jail, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Well, earlier, Sky's Mark Austin spoke to Victims Minister Alex Davis-Jones about the release of 2 of the killers of PC Andrew Harper.
The alternative would be that, for example, a domestic abuse perpetrator would be arrested and then bailed straight back to the victim because there wasn't room in prison.
But did you argue the case specifically about these 2 men involved in the killing of PC Harper? Did you argue that case strongly that they should not be released?
The case was considered, of course it was. All eligibility criteria was considered.
Did you argue for that outcome?
I argue for all victims, Mark. Yes, I argue for all victims. And I want to see serious licensing conditions, probation funded by £700 million, the biggest ever investment, to ensure that victims have assurances that when perpetrators are released early from prison, that doesn't mean prison stops. It means that they are monitored, that restriction zones are introduced to curtail their liberty. All of this is in place. And I wish we didn't have to do this. And of course, everything will be kept under review. And if we can go further as a government, then we will.
Yes, and Sonia, we go back to Ed's first question about why specifically you cannot change the law that those who have been involved in the killing of a police officer can't stay in jail for the whole of their sentence.
Yeah, I think that is a really good question and something that the government are yet to answer. I think we're now in this very difficult position where there aren't enough prison spaces, and so people do have to be released early. And that is very, very upsetting for victims and their families, understandably so. It's kind of a lesser of 2 evils, isn't it? And I do think that Alex Davies-Jones there, she makes a good point, which is that there are dangerous men in the here and now who need to be locked up. So the question is, what sort of system of rules is the government designing for early release? And are dangerous people, dangerous men, and also people who haven't really demonstrated any sort of acknowledgement that what they did was wrong, they've not sort of, you know, tried to make amends or whatever, they're not people who should be released either. You know, it feels like they should be serving the sentence that they would have served before these reforms. So, you know, the government's got to really think about how it implements this.
Lucy, I know we'll see you later on for new news at about past. For now, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's go to another story, which is the inherited in tray of the new Prime Minister. And it's being described as the biggest small boat ever. Officials in France say 173 migrants have been rescued in the Channel after their so-called mega dinghy capsized when its engine caught fire. Well, the total number on board broke the record, which was actually set last month when 165 people actually reached the UK on a 13-metre or 42-foot vessel. We've known, Ed, for a while that the people smugglers are packing more and more people onto these small dinghies.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely appalling. I mean, I don't want to make light of what happened today in the Channel. People's lives are at risk, and I'm pleased that everybody was saved. But, I mean, you know, at what point are we going to see a kind of cross-channel ferry being used by these gangs? I mean, this is a criminal enterprise. These people have a business model, they adapt it, they flex it. You know, we have to treat it on that basis. You know, I never thought I would quote Donald Trump, build a wall. But, you know, Europe has to get a grip of this crisis. And actually, we have to work with our European partners, even though we're no longer in the European Union. The European Union is met today because of what happened in Ceuta, which is the Spanish enclave in North Africa, where they have already sort of turned on each other, with Italy saying that we're going to close the Schengen agreement with Spain. But Europe has a border, and Europe must secure that border, and Europe must secure that border on the basis that this is no longer a humanitarian crisis, a refugee crisis. It is a business model run by cartels who are smuggling people illegally into Europe.
Interesting. This dinghy left a beach at Veules-les-Roses near Dieppe, we're told, on Monday night. It caught fire just in the French search and rescue region, but British vessels, British Border Security Command boats and an RNLI lifeboat helped rescue them. They were then taken to Boulogne-sur-Mer, and it has led Reform, because it came the day after Reform UK proposed using the British Navy to return migrants to France or Belgium, to say this incident proves that Reform UK's Operation Fortress plan is workable and that British vessels are able to take Channel migrants back to France without violating maritime or international law as part of a humanitarian mission. So they're using this very incident to justify their plan.
Yeah, I don't think the issue is that. I think the issue is that if we were to send the Navy in, sort of collecting up people trying to make the crossing on small boats and then dropping people off back in France without France's permission, that would spark a very serious diplomatic crisis. And Nigel Farage and their Home Affairs spokesperson, Zia Youssef, had zero answers on that I could hear when they launched their plan.
Well, except for calling it a humanitarian mission. And that's how they seem to frame it. I don't know if they've had legal advice that suggests that if they call it a humanitarian mission, then they can be involved, like this incident, this...
But the problem is that you do need to work with France, and you have to have France's agreement unless you want an extremely serious fallout with France and the EU. I don't think anyone thinks that's in anyone's interest. I think it is important to note that small boat crossings have fallen pretty significantly. I think it's 40% year on year. The difficulty is that there are some things I think we can do as the UK to sort of make ourselves a less attractive destination for asylum seekers, refugees who want to cross the Channel. But it's not just about that. It's about a whole broader set of push factors as well. And while I totally agree with you, Ed, the EU needs to think about how to secure its borders, it's much harder when you've got the sea rather than a land border. And the EU has, since 2014, 2015, when we saw migrants crossing huge numbers, across different various Mediterranean routes, it's tried a lot of things, including some really dubious things, like dropping people back in Libya, which has got a terrible track record of human rights abuses. But it's not like the EU hasn't tried, because no one wants...
At the time, that people were being plucked from just off the border of Libya, weren't they? I mean, right down off the North African coast. And I think many people in Italy, for example, like, why are we going all the way down there to collect people, effectively? So I'm just picking up on the one thing you said about taking migrants from Libya.
No, but there was a deal with Libya to essentially return people who tried to make the crossing to Libya. They paid Libya money, and there's evidence of really terrible human rights abuses. These things are never easy. There are never easy answers.
Yeah, OK. Lost but slightly, a deal with Turkey as well, if you think about it, for the Greek migration issue. Now, Sky News understands that Gianni Infantino has summoned senior staff to crisis talks in Morocco tomorrow. The FIFA boss abandoned his plans to sell off a stake in the World Cup after widespread condemnation. And today, two more senior figures at football's governing body distanced themselves from Infantino. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has the latest.
Gianni Infantino is set to hold emergency talks with senior staff. Sky News understands the embattled FIFA president has summoned them to the Moroccan capital, Rabat, and the meeting is due to take place on Wednesday, even as more of those close associates are calling him out, just weeks after they were together at the World Cup.
Arsene Wenger, FIFA's football development chief, and Matthias Grafström, the Secretary-General who runs the FIFA administration, both criticising Infantino's attempts to sell off parts of the World Cup.
Sky News exclusively obtained this email sent to FIFA staff by Matthias Grafström, who's effectively Infantino's number two. And it references the dismay within FIFA over the World Cup venture, which is called a sad and reproachable series of events that are difficult to comprehend and accept. Now, he doesn't reference Infantino, but he says that individuals' unstable moments and unfortunate episodes come and go. But their responsibility of staff is to keep football going.
Wenger insists he was not involved with planning the project and added it had to be withdrawn because I firmly believe in an independent FIFA that serves our game with commitment, transparency and integrity. The revolt within FIFA against Infantino's leadership is clear, but he remains in power. UEFA pushing to oust him or put up a rival candidate in next year's election. Prince Ali lost to Infantino a decade ago. Now the Jordanian FA president is making accusations about being denied cash owed by FIFA from his team playing in the Arab Cup. He said, "It was verbally communicated to me during the World Cup that if I endorsed Infantino, it would go a long way to helping our FA out. We did not endorse him before and certainly will not now. But the whole situation amounts to blackmail and we refuse to give in to that." Infantino is also not giving in or giving up. He's yet to be backed in the moment of crisis by Donald Trump, despite their apparent friendship. But this support was posted on Instagram by the US President's Special Representative for Global Partnerships. Paolo Zampoli rallying support for the embattled football chief by insisting the scheme was not about personal enrichment or greed. But inside FIFA, growing dissent and anger. Gianni Infantino being cut adrift by those once so close to him, speaking out with no public support. Rob Harris, Sky News.
Well, cut adrift. We'll see what this meeting, these emergency talks in Morocco's capital, Rabat, hold tomorrow. Morocco co-hosting the next World Cup in 2030 alongside Spain and Portugal. UEFA and European countries making clear they want him out. We'll see what he intends.
Yeah, we will. I mean, this whole thing just feels like a massive misstep, doesn't it, from Infantino? I'm not sure, can't really think of anyone who was positive about this plan apart from Infantino himself. You know, it's a big thing to mess with, the World Cup. And, yeah, I mean, I think we could see him gone. I'm not the world's closest follower of football, as you can probably tell. I'm sure Ed's got more...
But what are the lessons we can learn from this, Sonia?
I'm sure there's some lessons from politics.
In leadership
yes.
and corruption. I mean, I think, you know, it is... I mean, I think football politics make British politics look like a sort of teddy bear's picnic. So never say never with Infantino. Goodness knows what may be going on behind the scenes. And there are 211 football federations involved in this, so the possibilities to manipulate a result. But it seems clear to me, I mean, it's obviously a crisis. And I thought what the Jordan Football Association said was pretty eye-watering. You know, they said, we've taken part in a World Cup where half our fans were denied visas, where we've effectively had to pay US taxes by playing in the World Cup, and then the money we were due for winning an Arab Cup from FIFA has not been given to us. And it's quite clear it was being held back in order to get us to vote for the Infantino deal. And Sonia's right, it was a massive misstep because, in principle, you know, getting some private investment into the commercial side of the World Cup is in principle acceptable. But it was quite clear that Infantino was doing this in a hurry in order to make out like a bandit and become the chair of this organisation and earn NFL-style rewards. And it's a lesson. The lesson to all of us, Sonia, regardless of one's knowledge of football, is don't spend too much time with Donald Trump because his way of doing business will probably rub off on you.
Yes, indeed, yes. With the connections to the broader Trump family is the point as well, isn't it? Let's head to a conflict then. Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Moscow of targeting civilians after Ukrainian police released a video which shows a drone pursuing a civilian in the street. A warning, the video shows the moment up to the strike and the aftermath. Well, Ukrainian authorities, if you look at these pictures, say the man was a market trader who showed no signs of being a combatant. President Zelensky said it was evidence of what he called the drone safari that Russians are carrying out against civilians. The 52-year-old survived and he spoke shortly afterwards.
We started setting up, put up the umbrella, and I began taking out the boxes. My wife was there too. We heard a humming sound. We couldn't see it. It came flying out from somewhere behind the market where the bushes are and flew so low. My wife started running away and it started swinging at the car. I pointed it out to him. Look, it's just vegetables. But then it started coming at me, so I started running away. The drone aimed at the car and I was right next to it. It hit it and I fell down.
Yes, falling down with injuries to his back, legs and arms, we've been told. Well, the incident comes after Russian civilians were killed when a Ukrainian drone landed on a beach in the Black Sea region. And as our military analyst, Michael Clark, explains, the air war has taken a major turn.
In the last 24 hours, the Ukrainians have attacked 18 different regions, oblasts within Russia. That's more or less all of Russia west of the Urals. More than that, data and forensics at Sky have been able to locate all of the Wildberries warehouses that have been attacked in recent weeks. Now, these warehouses are huge warehouses. Wildberries is the Amazon of Russia, online retailing, and these warehouses contain an enormous amount of stock from all the small and medium enterprises, the small-scale suppliers that keep their stock in these warehouses for delivery. And those warehouses have been attacked all the way through Russia, even in Crimea, even in Novorossiysk, so that Wildberries itself, the company, is now talking about establishing in Kazakhstan new warehouses in 2027, 2028, which tells me that Wildberries think that this war won't be over anytime soon.
Yes, and Ukrainian officials say that the company Wildberries does provide goods which can be used for the military. But this is also about unsettling the Russian people and taking the war to Russian civilians, even if you're not targeting them.
Absolutely. I mean, the war has turned to a certain extent in Ukraine's favour, but again, we can't predict the outcome. But I think the Ukrainians are being very smart. They're attacking the Russian fuel supplies by destroying their refineries, and they're now attacking effectively the quality of life of Russians by destroying their version of Amazon. And the whole strategy is to tell the Russian people who have been able to a certain extent to ignore this war that this war is real and it's beginning to affect significantly, it's an understatement, significantly their quality of life. And I think the drone attack on the market trader, I mean, it's a small incident compared to what Russia has done in the last 4 years of this war, which is basically ignored all the conventions of war and targeted civilians. There are missiles raining down on Ukraine every night, which are indiscriminately attacking the accommodation of civilians who are not combatants. And that is Russia's methodology, is simply to pound Ukraine into submission. And Ukraine has pivoted and turned this war against Russia in a way none of us perhaps predicted.
Yes, and certainly the United Nations said last month in its most recent casualty report that more than 16,000 civilians have been killed in Ukraine since the war began, you know, especially in places like Kherson, which was, part of the invasion by Russia until they withdrew. And in terms of Ukraine's fight back, I just see the latest that a total of 184 Ukrainian drones targeted Moscow and the surrounding areas, according to the city's mayor today. Most of the drones intercepted some distance from the capital, 18 destroyed on their way into the city. But this, again, is part of the, Russian people sit up and notice what President Putin is doing.
And it's partly why there's been an uptick of Ukrainian fortunes in this war. There's a huge difference between that really chilling, terrifying clip that we saw of the drone targeting the Ukrainian market salary. Just really awful to watch. Huge difference between that, using drones to target civilians quite deliberately, I would argue, from that clip, and using it to sort of try and impact on the Russian way of life. And the whole reason that President Putin is waging this war is to sort of try and distract from economic troubles at home, to sort of be nationalist, to make sure that he tries to retain the support of the Russian people. He always seems to launch illegal conflict when things are problematic at home for him domestically. And I agree with Ed. I think it's very smart of the Ukrainians to target things that aren't going to have massive impact on life, like on the civilian casualties in Russia, but are really going to get at the Russian way of life, which has already been very affected by this conflict.
Yeah, distribution warehouses, and actually showing just how far their drones can go, which is, I think, up to 1,000 miles into Russia, which is absolutely extraordinary, the industry that they've developed, which the West is now, learning from as the cards are re-established in Zelensky's favour. Coming up next, we will take a first look at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, we'll take a look at the newspapers in just a moment, but first some breaking news tonight. And the Foreign Secretary Ed Miliband, a long-time critic of Donald Trump, it has to be said, is on his way to Washington for talks with his counterpart Marco Rubio. Well, Lucy McDade is back with us now, discussing what, Strait of Hormuz and other matters, no doubt.
Yeah, you guessed it. Of course, we'll be talking about who he's not meeting, Donald Trump, and the complexities, the potential challenges around that with Ed Miliband being appointed Foreign Secretary. But he's going out to have talks with Marco Rubio. It's not his first time meeting him. We can read maybe a little bit into that. They met fairly recently when Ed Miliband was Foreign Secretary at a summit in the Philippines. Is it a positive sign that he's been invited to Washington to meet him again? Maybe they'll be talking about the importance of reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And, of course, we've got that domestic element there as well, that Number 10 very keen to push tonight, that actually, while the Strait of Hormuz is effectively still blocked, it's having the impact on petrol prices here. I think just this week, they're at another record high since that war broke out in Iran. So they're going to be talking about that, the war in Ukraine as well. Some possible challenges for Ed Miliband, of course. Not only has he criticised Donald Trump before, racist, misogynist, he's called him a number of things beyond that as well, but also his views on energy policy, renewables, Donald Trump being in favour of fossil fuels, for example. So I think we'll be talking around the visit just as much as we will be talking about what they're actually discussing at the table.
Yes, apparently they had their first meeting on the sidelines of a foreign ministers' summit in the Philippines, and he was invited to the US Capitol on the back of that. But, you know, for many people, Ed Miliband is Mr. Net Zero. Donald Trump has two themes when he talks about Britain. It's our migration crisis and it's our North Sea oil and gas, which could provide billions. So, you know, it's an interesting backdrop of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Ed Miliband has to worry about what he said about Donald Trump in the past. I mean, he was only telling the truth. But he was only, you know, his version of Donald Trump was the same version that J.D. Vance had of Donald Trump. And look where J.D. Vance ended up as vice president. So I think, you know, bygones be bygones. And Donald Trump has said a lot worse things about a lot of other people.
David Lammy has said pretty terrible things about Donald Trump as well, didn't he? And
he was a great friend of J.D. Vance. So I think this kind of stuff is kind of water off a duck's back in the world of Trump that we now live in. I mean, the trouble is Trump is so awful, but there are certain moments when you just can't help chuckling, and his kind of obsession with windmills, and he calls wind turbines windmills, and I think he said yesterday that any country that has a windmill is going to go bankrupt. And it's just kind of, it's so absurd. It's sort of weirdly entertaining. But you know, I think Miliband will have sensible discussions with Rubio, his opposite number, about the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, it's slightly jarring to hear, you know, the Strait of Hormuz is a cost of living issue. It's kind of, you know, there are lots of cost of living issues. Strait of Hormuz is a massive geopolitical issue for the global economy. And Britain actually is slightly on the back foot there because of the record of Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, whether you agree with it or not. I think Keir Starmer was right, actually, not to get involved. But there'll be that kind of level... low level of hostility that Britain wasn't seen to be a willing partner of this war, which has been a catastrophe for America. But anyway, I think Ed Miliband will get a fair hearing. I still think Britain is seen by the US administration as a valuable partner. So I don't think we should worry about what he said about Donald Trump, or indeed the windmills that he's obsessed by.
Yes, well, yeah, windmills because of golf courses, bad views apparently as well. Yeah, Strait of Hormuz, absolutely critical, like every international waterway over which other nations might impose tolls in the future. Yeah. You know, that's how it's upended what is the norms of international shipping and trading, for which the UK and America have been such proponents. But, you know, it's good to get there quickly, isn't it? You know, government so recently, it's, you know, the first Washington trip is important.
It is. I mean, Trump is a president like no other that's ever come before him. He's incredibly unpredictable. But at the end of the day, there are people in the US administration who know how important the alliance with the UK is, that it's incredibly strategically important, not just for the UK, but for the US. I suspect the two men are grown-ups. They will be able to get on, have a conversation. Maybe there would be more sparks flying if Ed Miliband was meeting with Donald Trump. Although I have to say, the one thing about Donald Trump is that, you know, when it is an ally, and they're British, he's actually quite good at sort of playing along with diplomacy in the moment. It's the stuff he says afterwards on Twitter about things like North Sea oil that lead to the sort of more interesting fallout. So I think it will probably be OK, but it is notable, I think, that the noises coming out of the White House and the administration were that they weren't that positive about Ed Miliband being appointed Foreign Secretary, and he was anyway, but I suspect that's because domestically, it very much suited Andy Burnham politically to put Ed Miliband, a close ally, in a plum role like Foreign Secretary, but also keep him out of being Chancellor.
OK. Lucy, once again, thank you very much indeed. And no doubt we'll get more pictures and comments from that visit. Well, time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Let us start with the Daily Mail, which claims that 9,000 domestic abusers are set to be released within the next 3 years under the government's prisoner early release scheme. The Sun says the new Prime Minister Andy Burnham faces being taken to court by police officers to block the early release of PC Andrew Harper's killers. And the Metro speaks to a mother who says that one of her son's killers, jailed just last year, is being considered also for early release. French authorities have been accused of doing nothing to stop the migrant crisis after 173 people were saved from a burning mega dinghy in the English Channel. That's the lead story for the Daily Express. The Guardian reports that 8 of the biggest oil companies in the world have collectively amassed profits of more than $90 billion from the ongoing war in Iran and the climate crisis. The Times says ministers are considering plans to exploit the fiscal rules around government borrowing to boost economic growth through infrastructure and housing. The front of the Eye says ministers could introduce profit caps on private social care providers to try to make care homes more affordable, something the government has tonight denied. The Mirror's front page says grieving parents who lost their children to knife crime have welcomed the news that 15,000 blades have been removed from the streets in a year. The Financial Times leads on Google, raising more than $150 billion to supply chips to AI company Anthropic, following surging demand. And The Star leads on rain in parts of Britain, following the driest ever July last month. Their headline, is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's super rain. You got caught in it. I got caught in it.
I got rained on.
Rained on, I know.
At the moment, I was singing in the rain.
I screamed in delight. Yeah. Who knew, eh? Right, exactly.
I was very sad because where I live, it only rained for 5 minutes and then it stopped and then the sun came out again.
I know.
And it's raining.
A Brit complaining there wasn't enough rain in the summer.
I'm reliably informed it's raining in Scotland. Let's get up there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, good luck, anyway. Right, let's take a look at those papers then, shall we? Starting with The Sun. Yeah. See you in court, PM. You know, this is the ongoing concerns about this early release scheme.
That's right. So this is one of the hardest cases, I think, the killers of PC Harper. It is important to stress they were convicted of manslaughter, not murder, which means that a court found that the intent to kill wasn't there, but still, you know, they killed a police officer in horrific circumstances, and his relatives, his wife, his mother are very understandably incredibly upset about it. So there are difficult questions about this particular case and whether the Prime Minister could find a way of ensuring that people who've killed emergency services workers aren't eligible for the early release scheme. There's a suggestion in this story, actually, from the Police Federation that they might actually try and take the government to court over this. One might assume they might judicially review the decision to see if it's lawful. I'm not sure of the strength of the legal case, but police officers themselves, police leaders, are clearly very angry. But to be fair to the government, it is between a rock and a hard place, which is that there simply hasn't been enough building of prison places. They're building more now. The Labour government has really increased prison building rates. And what are they to do? Because there are more people who need to be locked up. We've got another front page saying 9,300 domestic abusers are set to be released. That is awful for their victims.
Let's ask Ed that, because, I mean, many of the campaigners, and in fact some in the prison system, suggested domestic abusers should also have been on the list of grooming gangs and paedophiles who have now been excluded by the Prime Minister. This is a big number, over a number of years, to be fair, but horrifying for people, because the suggestion is that domestic abusers go back and abuse the same victim. That's the point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I hadn't heard what Jess Phillips, the former minister on this issue for women and girls, said, but I assume that she's not happy about this. I mean, it's not true, actually, that Labour are building more prison places. The number of prison places have actually fallen by 500 since Labour came into power.
They have plans to build...
Yeah, they have plans. And this is what you hear Labour ministers coming along and saying we're launching the biggest prison building plans since the Victorian age. Well, I joined the gym, but it makes no difference if I don't actually go to the gym. I'd quite like to see them build these prisons. There was plans to build 3,500 prison places. The builder went bankrupt. They've done nothing about it for the last 18 months. So please, can we just get on and build the prison places? Because this issue is not going away for Andy Burnham. And the blunt point, regardless of whether you blame the last Conservative government, is that this is Andy Burnham's first big political crisis, and how he handles it, it's going to be on him. Yeah. That's who voters are going to judge.
The two front pages...
He is now the Prime Minister.
Yeah, the Sun being threatened by police officers to see him in court, and a domestic abuse on the front page of the Daily Mail.
A point I haven't made before, because I've obviously been talking about this issue a lot over the last 2 days. The Police Federation, yes, the Thames Valley Police Federation. PC Harper was a Thames Valley police officer. The morale of the police, because if you release these killers, it's not just the family, obviously, the trauma that they are suffering. It's the morale of the police force and what a signal it sends them. That's just an objective comment. If you are into political self-preservation, you will note that this is the most high-profile case, and the public and the police do not want to see these killers released. You have to do something about it. That's what I would be saying to Andy Burnham behind closed doors in Downing Street or wherever he is on holiday.
Well, I mean, the first test, but there are many more, including the small boats crisis. One mega dinghy, as it's been described, 173 migrants on it, caught fire, rescued by the French and by the British, as it turns out, taken back to Boulogne. How many more lives will you risk by doing nothing? The accusation Express has for French police.
Yeah, so that's obviously levelled at the French rather than the British. And there are big, difficult questions because, Reform came up with this plan earlier in the week. Oh, well, we'll just get the Navy to go in and scoop up people from the Channel and dump them back in France. And you can't really do that without France's permission, without provoking a diplomatic crisis. There are definitely fair questions to be asked about the French and what they're doing. There are particular issues around, you do see these pictures of some French police officers not doing anything, and that is apparently because there's a particular part of French police that are empowered to go and sort of try and disrupt people launching boats, and some local officers do not have those powers. So, but numbers have come down year on year. So numbers of small boat crossing are down by 40%. So I think it is important to see this in that context, and also with the understanding that Rishi Sunak said he was going to stop small boats. It's very difficult to do because there are so many push factors.
Yeah, let's try and rattle through as many as we can. I'm going to jump to the Times, which is related, actually, because it's about Andy Burnham. We're talking about the issues on his desk. Andy Burnham's wife said not again and told him that Labour had already rejected him twice when he told her he wanted to make another attempt to reach Downing Street. Well, there you go.
Yeah, the voice of reason. I would, if you don't mind, Andy, I'd just like to get on with my life, and it's going to be interesting how Andy Burnham's wife, Marie-France Van Heel, plays it as the Prime Minister's wife. I mean, you get a lot of scrutiny as the other half of a Prime Minister, and I hope that she's given her privacy and entitled to her privacy, if that's what she wants. And the other, just incidental to that, is it's interesting that it was a podcast called How to Fail, which is by a woman called Elizabeth Day, which has a million plus subscribers.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
And this is the Andy Burnham social media strategy. So we can sit here as Westminster nerds and critique the government and say it's all wrong, but there will be hundreds of thousands of ordinary people who will be hearing their Prime Minister talk like an ordinary person about the kind of domestic discussion he had about going for this particular job, as I'm sure millions of families do throughout the year about jobs that either of them are going for. So that's a smart move from Andy Burnham, I think.
Yeah. I'm just going to talk about the Daily Mirror just quickly. Grieving parents of children killed by knives have welcomed news that 15,000 blades have been taken off the streets in a year. That's the lead for the Mirror. But I want to go to The Guardian, Sonia. Profits of war. You know, oil prices have gone up. We all know that. It leads to profits for oil giants around the world, according to The Guardian's front page.
That's right. So 8 of the biggest oil companies have benefited from a windfall of more than $90 billion in just 3 months as a result of what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz and the increase in the spike in global oil prices that has resulted. And there's always a winner when oil prices go up, and it is the oil companies, even those that are completely unaffected by, you know, they've got nothing to do with Iran. It's just that the price of their oil that they're selling goes up as well. And quite frankly, there's a suggestion here, you know, that there should be a windfall tax on these windfall profits, and I completely agree.
Yeah.
Well, the amazing thing is, of course, Donald Trump agrees with you as well, because he is obsessed, obviously, by the gas price as we get closer to the midterm elections. And I think he said something yesterday, you've got to share your profits with the American people. It will not surprise me if in the next few days Donald Trump doesn't come for those profits.
Actually, I think the US Trade Secretary has said he's expecting fuel prices, as we would call them, to come down. But I can't... I've got too many papers in the way to actually...
Right, yes.
Let's find that quote. I'll do it next time. Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. 4 men arrested over an illegal waste site in Wigan. We'll have the details of that.
Those vivid colours of summer have faded now, but the trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation. We lost 3 of them.
Ruda Cabana's guilty pleas mean they won't have to relive what they saw in court, but everyone here tells you they'll carry it for the rest of their lives. You see people running red lights time after time after time. This is an offence that sometimes has the most awful of consequences.
When you speed through a pedestrian crossing, there is a risk that you could batter somebody to death. She filled our lives with light. She was innocent, she was happy.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
He had a beautiful death. He fell asleep in my arms. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them, quite often, is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Now let's head to a story that we brought you last month and the toxic waste found at an illegal dump in Wigan. Well, today, Greater Manchester Police said 4 men had been arrested in connection with the site. Let's find out more. Sky's Phoebe Southworth joins us now. Yes, the toxicity, the leaching of these sites, we've seen them elsewhere, haven't we? You know, and the public are, you know, disgruntled to see these toxic waste sites anywhere popping up.
Yeah, absolutely. The Environment Agency has been cracking down on these illegal waste dumping sites across the UK, but perhaps one of the most notorious is the Bolton House Road site in Wigan. Neighbours and residents who live nearby have been left absolutely distraught by the impact on their day-to-day life. Putrid smells wafting towards their properties, and a fire at the site actually caused schools to shut for a whole week last summer. Well, this story is not something that is new to Sky News. We've done a lot on this subject, and earlier this year we teamed up with scientists and found that at 3 different sites across the UK, a toxic mix of chemicals was found, raising really serious questions about the impact on the local population's health. Well, in terms of how the police are responding, today 4 arrests of 4 men aged between 24 and 59 from Wigan, Leeds and Liverpool. This follows an arrest of another man from Birmingham earlier this year. And also one of these men that was arrested today is also arrested in connection with an illegal dump of 30,000 tonnes of waste in Leicestershire. So the police do appear to be taking this very seriously and cracking down. In terms of the government, they are saying that they are prepared to fund the clean-up of this particular site in Wigan as part of their waste crime action plan. Andy Burnham, the new Prime Minister, has called it organised crime, and he says that local communities are paying the price and the days of making easy money from waste are over.
Phoebe, many thanks for that. I mean, it leaves us outraged, doesn't it, looking at those pictures?
Yeah, it's just awful. It's great that the police are taking action, but also it's kind of a reminder to all of us because, you know, you've got to be really careful who you pay to come and take away your waste, essentially, because organised crime and gangs have clearly spotted this as a money-making opportunity.
Ed?
Yes, it's unbelievable. They can, I mean, 30,000 tonnes. I mean, talking about early release, these are people who I would never give early release to. I mean, it's sort of mind-boggling. But they spot this opportunity. It's an industrial enterprise, tons and tons of rubbish, destroying people's lives, closing schools, dumped next to houses and schools. But it is a crime, I think, if you focus on it, the chances of detecting people are probably quite high because you can't run an enterprise like that without leaving some footprints. So I'm delighted that the police are taking action. I'm delighted there's a focus on it. I hope we can try and eradicate it.
Absolutely, and just the organisation to get it there. It's mind-boggling.
It's quite incredible. Yeah. I mean, it's like running a municipal garbage company.
Yeah.
But
and obviously they won't be paying taxes either on the money they make.
No.
OK, time for the weather? Well, the next few days will bring outbreaks of rain, mainly to the north, with nothing significant expected for the parched south. There was a bit today, as we said. Britain can expect a mostly fine, warm start tomorrow, but there will be, bless you, Sonia, in the far north and a few showers elsewhere. Ireland and Northern Ireland, meanwhile, will be cooler, with more widespread showers and some more prolonged rain in the north. Northern parts will see further showers tomorrow, with more general rain likely over northern parts of Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland for a time. Southern parts, meanwhile, will be mainly dry, if rather cloudy, away from the southeast.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Tonight on The Wrap, the Justice Secretary's personal apology to the family of PC Andrew Harper over the early release of two of his killers. Anger and disbelief among victims and their families after the government confirmed changes to sentencing that will see 5,000 prisoners freed early. Ministers say without action, prisons would be full within months. Also tonight, crisis talk. Sky News understands FIFA boss Gianni Infantino has summoned his senior staff to a meeting in Morocco tomorrow. A mass funeral takes place in Gaza for more than 100 Palestinians killed in an airstrike at the beginning of the war. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with the journalist and broadcaster Sonia Sodha and the former Culture Secretary Lord Ed Vaizey. Plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers in half an hour's time. Well, hello and a very good evening to you. Sonia, Ed, welcome to both of you as well. We're starting with the row over the early release of prisoners, perhaps the first big test of Andy Burnham's premiership, amid real anger from victims and their families. And as we'll see from the newspaper shortly, the inevitable backlash continues, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real problem for Andy Burnham. We all know the circumstances, and we can blame the last Conservative government for not building enough prison places, but we are here and now. This review of the Andy Burnham commissioned a review of the early prisoner release thing, which is why it's been delayed by a month, and that was sparked by public outcry when it became known that PC Harper's killers were going to be released early. And so we've found ourselves in a paradoxical situation where Andy Burnham has, I think quite rightly, restricted who can be released early. So rapists will not be released early and so on. But yet he has said he would like to go further, and yet the killers of PC Harper are still due to be released early. And nobody can work out why. Nobody can work out whether, if they are restricted from early release, does that open up a whole tranche of prisoners who then can't be early released and the problem gets worse? But I think the public need to know that. But I think objectively, and I don't want to sound kind of brutal, but this is a big political problem for Andy Burnham. The public are not going to accept it. The Police Federation, the trade union of the police, is threatening to sue. So the police themselves are outraged. And I suspect there will have to be a U-turn on this.
Honeymoon's looking, fading already, isn't it, for the new Prime Minister? Big issues, though.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think we do need to be clear that this is not a problem of his own making. It's a problem caused by the fact that we have not built enough prison places in this country for decades. The successive Conservative governments did not build enough. Labour now say they are building more. But these things do take time. And I think what these cases show is, I mean, I have every sympathy with victims' families. It's awful if there's somebody who's done something awful to you, like domestically abused you, or to a relative, and then you find out they're getting released early. That is just the most awful letter you can receive. But it shows the difficulty with this, because Andy Burnham has, in fact, as Ed says, there were a lot of people who warned when Keir Starmer sort of announced this early release scheme that actually it went too far and it was going to be too difficult for victims' families. Andy Burnham has stepped back from that, but you're always going to get these very difficult edge cases when you're releasing people early from prison services that they're supposed to be serving. So I agree with Ed. It's a very difficult political issue. It was always going to blow up. This case of PC Harper is particularly horrific because it's a police officer who died in horrific circumstances in the line of duty. Completely understand why his colleagues, as well as his family, are absolutely furious about this. But there's no easy way. I mean, yes, they can U-turn on specifically emergency people who are involved in the killings of emergency workers, but there are always going to be these very emotionally fraught edge cases.
Yes,
and that is a fair point because PC Harper's killers will be released at some point, even if they serve the full sentence that they were given. And don't forget, they had a discount on their sentences. They pleaded guilty to manslaughter. They were juveniles, teenagers, so they automatically got a lower sentence than if they had been adults. But I think Sonia has a good point there, which is, the media scrutiny of this means that if they do a U-turn on PC Harper, then the next difficult case will take up the headlines. So I do absolutely accept that this is a massively difficult problem, and there is no possible answer, if you're going to release prisoners early, that is going to completely satisfy the public. But as I've said before, we're dealing with the here and now. What is frustrating, and I realise that this is kind of me wishing something that's almost impossible, is that we're not having a proper debate in this country about sentencing and incarceration. And we put many more people in prison than other European countries. Part of it, again, is a throwback to the Conservative government, which increased sentences. It's very easy for politicians to say we need to punish people more severely, we need to make sentences longer. They get a huge round of applause from the public, and then we end up where we are today.
Let's move on. Okay. Look at a moment. I need to just actually see our report, because the Justice Secretary today apologised to the family of PC Andrew Harper after confirming changes to sentencing that will see 5,000 prisoners released early. The list that will be exempt then: rapists, child sex offenders, those involved in grooming gangs are excluded from the plans designed to tackle a critical shortfall of capacity in UK jails. But victims say they're appalled. PC Harper's widow accusing the government of an utter betrayal. That is not the only high-profile case, though, as Sky's correspondent Molly Malone explains.
Early release has now been part of prison policy for years, with successive governments lurching from one emergency measure to the next.
Do you think it's right that people are being let out early?
Well, if it helps the situation, then yeah.
As of this year, it became law, and it's here to stay. But the latest plans have been revised to exclude rapists, groomers, and those serving sentences for serious child sex offences from being freed early.
It feels like a victory and also a bittersweet moment, really. It felt like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders.
That same relief, though, not being felt by everyone. Tim's daughter Ellie was shot and killed on Christmas Eve in 2022. She was an innocent bystander, caught in the middle of a gang dispute. Her murderer's co-defendant, Thomas Waring, who was sentenced for 9 years for his involvement and assisting an offender, is set to be released early under previous plans.
It was obvious it was a numbers game. It was all about numbers. It makes me angry. It's like he's got away with murder, which he literally has. And it makes a whole mockery of the system.
This review, in part, came about because of public outrage over the case of PC Andrew Harper, who was killed in the line of duty when responding to a burglary in 2019. 2 of his killers, convicted of manslaughter, remain eligible for early release. His widow, Lizzie, calling it an affront to justice, an utter betrayal, and one she won't be able to forgive or to forget.
The consequences of this are, were we not to make these changes, then we would run out of prison places in this October or November. I know that's difficult. I know that's created harm, and that's none of that, it's not Lizzie Harper's fault. And, I'm sorry that she's been put into this situation as a result. I genuinely am.
This is a move that has created division between victims groups, caused uncertainty for an already stretched prison and probation service that now has to recalculate sentences again, and fears that in a rush to make change, mistakes could be made.
Well, there's 2 things. One is the extent of the work that is envisaged is going to be coming their way. Secondly, is their ability to protect the public to the standards that the public want and we want.
And there is still plenty more to do. A promise to build 14,000 new prison places by 2031, to look at the potential early release of other offenders, like women, and to review controversial indefinite sentences. But this was all supposed to be settled months ago, with new legislation brought in under Keir Starmer. Instead, the sense of injustice and confusion continues. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Well, it is The Sun which is reporting that the release of 2 of the killers of PC Andrew Harper could be challenged by court. This is the Police Federation in the Thames Valley area saying the ruling is an insult to Andrew's family, friends and colleagues, that the Prime Minister faces being taken to court by furious police officers for failing to halt the early release of 2 of PC Andrew Harper's killers. And the Daily Mail as well, let's just show you that too. They've picked up on domestic abusers, which are not included in the exemption, as outlined by Andy Burnham. They suggest that over 3 years, 9,300 domestic abusers are set to be released. This is clearly an issue which is challenging the new government. And earlier, Sky's Mark Austin spoke to the victims' minister, Alex Davis-Jones, about the release of 2 of the killers of PC Andrew Harper.
The alternative would be that, for example, a domestic abuse perpetrator would be arrested and then bailed straight back to the victim because there wasn't room in prison.
But did you argue the case specifically about these 2 men involved in the killing of PC Harper? Did you argue that case strongly that they should not be released?
The case was considered, of course it was. All eligibility criteria was considered.
Did you argue for that outcome?
I argue for all victims, Mark. Yes, I argue for all victims. And I want to see serious licensing conditions, probation funded by £700 million, the biggest ever investment, to ensure that victims have assurances that when perpetrators are released early from prison, that doesn't mean prison stops. It means that they are monitored, that restriction zones are introduced to curtail their liberty. All of this is in place. And I wish we didn't have to do this. And of course, everything will be kept under review. And if we can go further as a government, then we will.
Yeah, pressure on government, absolutely. The newspapers are not giving up. We see the threat of legal action. We see the Daily Mail trying to put figures to some of those who might be released. And we see, a minister under pressure.
Absolutely. It is really, really difficult. I think you can't get away from that. The government is between a rock and a hard place. I suspect, like Ed, we will see some action on PC Harper's killers. There'll have to be a general change in the rule, though. You can't apply this to individuals. It will have to be about something to do with emergency workers, killing of emergency workers, and I think I would support that. On domestic abusers, though, it's awful, because I think the problem is if you take all domestic abusers, there are so many men in prison for domestic abuse. If you take all domestic abusers out of this scheme, then you're not going to free up the prison spaces that we need to lock up the men who are being charged with and convicted of domestic abuse today. It's a horrible situation. What do you do? I feel so much for those victims, though, because it is terrible. If you think you've bought yourself a 9-year, say, respite or a 5-year respite because somebody has to serve that minimum sentence and now you're being told they're being let out, say, a few months or a year early, psychologically that is so damaging to you.
So what do you do? In the short term, do you look at the women's prison estate? Many are in for shorter sentences, often drug-related. Many people say it has a massive impact on, for example, their children, that there are other mechanisms that could be enacted.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that in the next 4 weeks, but certainly there is now a debate starting about, you know, should women be in prison? Because they're 3,500 women prisoners, they're 5% of the prison population, less than 1%, I think, are in for violent offences.
Most of them are victims of abuse themselves. I think it's 2/3 are victims of domestic abuse themselves.
Exactly, and which goes back to this whole debate about sentencing and you know, whether we treat people or not. And I think, you know, the line for me is about violent offences. You know, I don't want to see rapists released early. I don't want to see muggers released early. But, you know, if you have to release people early, do you release the fraudsters and people who have stolen, but who aren't, as it were, a physical danger to society, that won't put people's lives at risk or health at risk? But I don't have the figures in front of me about how that would work, and I, to a certain extent, have to accept what the government says, that this is a huge crisis, and if they have gone as far as they can and they cannot get any further. My point about the PC Harper killers, accepting Sonia's point that if that is dealt with there will be another issue, is this is a big, big political problem for Andy Burnham and he has to address it.
OK, we'll see what happens next, certainly. In the meantime, let's go to FIFA, because Sky News understands that the embattled Gianni Infantino has summoned senior staff to crisis talks in Morocco tomorrow. The FIFA boss abandoned his plans to sell off a stake in the World Cup after widespread condemnation. Today, 2 more senior figures at football's governing body distanced themselves from him. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has the latest.
Gianni Infantino is set to hold emergency talks with senior staff. Sky News understands the embattled FIFA president has summoned them to the Moroccan capital, Rabat, and the meeting is due to take place on Wednesday, even as more of those close associates are calling him out, just weeks after they were together at the World Cup.
Arsene Wenger, FIFA's football development chief, and Matthias Grafström, the Secretary-General who runs the FIFA administration, both criticising Infantino's attempts to sell off parts of the World Cup.
Sky News exclusively obtained this email sent to FIFA staff by Matthias Grafström, who's effectively Infantino's number 2. And it references the dismay within FIFA over the World Cup venture, which is called a sad and reproachable series of events that are difficult to comprehend and accept. Now, he doesn't reference Infantino, but he says that individuals, unstable moments and unfortunate episodes come and go. But their responsibility of staff is to keep football going.
Wenger insists he was not involved with planning the project and added it had to be withdrawn because I firmly believe in an independent FIFA that serves our game with commitment, transparency and integrity. The revolt within FIFA against Infantino's leadership is clear, but he remains in power. UEFA pushing to oust him or put up a rival candidate in next year's election. Prince Ali lost to Infantino a decade ago. Now the Jordanian FA president is making accusations about being denied cash owed by FIFA from his team playing in the Arab Cup. He said, "It was verbally communicated to me during the World Cup that if I endorsed Infantino, it would go a long way to helping our FA out. We did not endorse him before and certainly will not now. But the whole situation amounts to blackmail and we refuse to give in to that." Infantino is also not giving in or giving up. he's yet to be backed in the moment of crisis by Donald Trump, despite their apparent friendship. But this support was posted on Instagram by the US President's Special Representative for Global Partnerships. Paolo Zampoli rallying support for the embattled football chief by insisting the scheme was not about personal enrichment or greed. But inside FIFA, growing dissent and anger. Gianni Infantino being cut adrift by those once so close to him, speaking out with no public support. Rob Harris, Sky News.
So it feels like an emergency meeting, does it not? In Morocco, co-host of the next World Cup. Any bets? What are you expecting?
I'm not expecting much to happen. I think football politics is opaque, complicated, dare I say corrupt, without being sued for libel. There are 211 football associations in play here. Infantino is fighting for his job. He's obviously a smart man, a Machiavellian man, and he might come up with something that gets him through to the next crisis. And how many football associations are actually prepared to put their head above the parapet? So I'm not counting Infantino out yet, even though I think he should obviously go.
OK, and the point is he's already expanded the World Cup. He has suggested it's expanded more. It means more of the smaller nations might back him for re-election kind of policy.
He was president when some incredibly on-the-ground controversial decisions were taking place during the World Cup around, American players who got red cards and were banned from a match and then reinstated. So, I mean, he is surrounded by controversy. But one thing I will say as a relative outsider to football politics is the whole thing just stinks. I mean, it is embedded in corruption, global football, in the same way, actually, the Olympics are, if you look at the Olympics. And it does sort of raise the question, it's incredibly expensive to put these, contests on. There's so much corruption in global sport, and you sort of think, well, where is all the sportsmen and sportswomanship gone? The stuff that we see from on-the-ground players. I think, the people at the top could do with reflecting that a bit more.
Is it a truly terrible idea to drum up more private cash for a global event?
No, it's not.
So in a sense, was it the way he did it rather than what he was doing?
In principle, it's not a bad idea. You could have a perfectly reasonable discussion. And I thought your point earlier about, if he expands the World Cup, you get more football associations potentially able to play at the World Cup. That's an amazing...
the same vote as Spain, the winners.
It's an amazing incentive. Exactly. They all have the same vote, whether you're, a small Pacific island or Germany. And, so Infantino will be saying behind closed doors, listen, back me, because I'm going to expand the World Cup to 64 teams. Your team might get a chance to play on the world stage. That's very tempting. That's why it's not all, cut and dried, as it might appear to be. But it is, the World Cup was great this year. It really was great. And funnily enough, expanding it to 48 teams, I think, did work. But it was also ghastly. Because it was so commercial,
the refreshment
so
breaks.
Focused on making money.
That awful half-time show in the final, no.
I weirdly quite like that.
Did you?
I just loved Madonna in a golf cart. It was just epic.
Pros and cons of all the changes, let's put it that way. Full coverage, obviously, on what happens with Infantino in Morocco tomorrow, certainly. Well, coming up next on The Wrap, a mass funeral has taken place today for Palestinians whose bodies were recovered after nearly 3 years under the rubble in Gaza City.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
A mass funeral has taken place today for 112 Palestinians whose bodies were recovered after nearly 3 years under the rubble in Gaza City. More than 300 people were killed by an Israeli strike in the city's Sabra neighbourhood in November of 2023. Let's get more then. Here's Sky's Tom Cheshire with the latest.
For nearly 3 years, their bodies had been under the ground, dead but not yet buried. Today, they were laid to rest, 112 people. 40 of them were children.
In this massacre, I lost my mother, my father, my brother, my cousins, my entire family. Today, we recovered the remains of some of the 112 martyrs.
I'm glad, because they're going to bury my dad and mum. I used to play with them a lot. I love them. I love them, I miss them, and I want to play with them.
In some cases, there were only the scantest of remains. This was one of the largest mass funerals in Gaza since the war began. 308 people were killed in the strike on a residential block back in November 2023. It was in the early months of the war when Israel was launching strikes like this on a different neighborhood throughout Gaza, following Hamas's attack on October the 7th. The IDF said it was targeting terrorists and associated infrastructure. The ongoing war made recovery of the bodies impossible. The ceasefire agreed in October last year gave more space for efforts like these by Gaza's Hamas-run Civil Defense Agency. But it is still difficult. Many of the dead had to be dug out by hand.
We recovered 112 bodies over 17 days, under extremely difficult conditions, with no resources, no capabilities and no equipment, apart from a single excavator working alongside our teams, which is genuinely insufficient for carrying out the humanitarian task of recovering all the victims from beneath the rubble.
Heavy machinery was supposed to be allowed into Gaza as part of the ceasefire's first phase. Palestinians say they haven't received nearly enough. Despite that ceasefire, Israel has continued to strike Gaza, killing more than 1,000 Palestinians since the agreement. And the future looks increasingly like a stalemate. Last week, the US-led Board of Peace announced plans for the second phase, including the gradual withdrawal of Israeli troops. But that depends on the complete disarmament of Hamas. And Hamas says it won't disarm until the IDF stops its strikes and pulls out of Gaza. That is all for the future, but people here are still dealing with the past. 157 people are still under the rubble of this block, bodies that are waiting to be brought up, but perhaps never will be. Over the coming weeks, the Gaza Civil Defense says it will look for 1,000 more. And across Gaza, 9,000 are still missing. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Very difficult to watch those pictures, with more to come quite clearly. It comes as Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated his stance tonight that Israel will not withdraw from Gaza until Hamas has been completely disarmed. Worth remembering that, you know, they've taken control of large parts of the Gaza territory. It's faded from view, hasn't it?
It has faded from view, and I was talking about this today. Somebody was making that point to me that it's faded from view. I mean, there was a ceasefire, but it's you know, so it's now a low-level war. But you know, we're not out of the, you know, there's no solution to this unless we get a sort of two-state solution, because what has gone on since the attack on Israel on October the 7th and then Israel's attack on Gaza, you know, you look at the pictures of the children at this funeral and you think to yourself, as a human being, those children are not going to grow up with any love for Israel, obviously. So that is the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that, actually on both sides, that cannot be reconciled. It's an intractable conflict.
And yet October the 7th and everything that followed, the thousands of deaths we've seen in Gaza, has taken us so far from a two-state solution.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what you're supposed to do from here.
Well, it's just so depressing to watch, really. And, I mean, October 7th, horrific attack by Hamas on Israel. And there were really serious questions for Israel as well about the proportionality of its response, the number of civilians that have been killed. What was Israel's end objective? I mean, just very hard to see how you're ever going to wholly extract Hamas from Gaza. So what was it all for? And, you know, there's definitely a sense that Netanyahu, you know, propped up by far-right members of his coalition government, is, you know, pursuing this conflict in a way that sort of keeps him in post, as opposed to... And there's a lot of Israeli citizens who are extremely unhappy with the way he's conducting this conflict. And, yeah, as we've just been saying, it seems that with every day that ticks by, you get further and further from the possibility of two states living peacefully side by side.
Exactly, and Netanyahu, you know, facing election in early autumn as well. Let's take a look, shall we, at the front pages of tomorrow's newspaper, starting with the Daily Mail. It says more than 9,000 domestic abusers are set to be released within the next 3 years under the government's prisoner early release scheme. The front of the Telegraph says the Prime Minister has been urged to block the release of PC Andrew Harper's killers amid accusations that doing so would not be justice. At the same time, The Sun says Andy Burnham faces being taken to court by police officers to ensure Harper's killers stay in prison. And the Metro speaks to a mother who says that one of her son's killers, jailed just last year, is being considered for early release. French authorities have been accused of doing nothing to stop the migrant crisis. That after 173 people were saved from a burning mega dinghy in the English Channel. That's the lead for The Express. The Guardian reports that 8 of the biggest oil companies in the world have collectively amassed profits of more than $90 billion from the ongoing war in Iran. The Times says ministers are considering plans to exploit the fiscal rules around government borrowing to boost economic growth through infrastructure and housing. The front of the Eye says ministers could introduce profit caps on private social care providers to try to make care homes more affordable, something the government has denied. The Mirror's front page says grieving parents who lost their children to knife crime have welcomed the news that 15,000 blades have been removed from the streets in a year. FT leading on Google, raising more than $150 billion to supply chips to AI company Anthropic following surging demand. And The Star leading on rain in parts of Britain following the driest ever July last month. The headline, is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's super rain. It is unusual in some parts, as they have their fun with that. But let's kick off with the Metro. Jailed just last year, the headline reads, but my son's killer already set for freedom. This is the ongoing consternation over early release. With every early release, at the end of it, there's a victim or more.
That's right. And I mean, this is a horrific story. The mother of, you know, her 15-year-old son was killed. by two teenage boys. One of them sort of is convicted as an accessory, I think, because he was. The story says he was urging on the other gang member to kill her son. And she finds out that he is being considered... I mean, it can't be at this point because he's been given 11 years. So I imagine there's further to go on his sentence because he's only been in prison for a year. But, you know, it's a horrible thing to have to learn about somebody who was involved in killing your son. And unfortunately, I think the government is between a rock and a hard place. There aren't enough prison places. There are people being convicted of equally terrible crimes, including domestic abuse, including manslaughter, etc., in the here and now. What is the government to do? Is it supposed to kind of not lock them up? So it's a really, really difficult position. And you know, it's Andy Burnham's first big test, I think, first big crisis. But I think it's only fair to acknowledge that it's not one directly of his own making.
Well, indeed, and this mother suggesting that she feels like she's not being allowed to grieve. One is being considered for early release. The other is appealing, she's learned, after receiving a minimum of 21 years. So,
I mean, I do understand that, but at the same time, it's terrible for victims' families. But there are appeal systems in our criminal justice system.
Yeah, absolutely. Joy, should we move on?
Yeah.
Yeah? OK, let's go to the Times then. This is how the government manages to, for example, build council houses or infrastructure, with or without the support of business. And the suggestion in the Times is that ministers are drawing up plans to exploit the fiscal rules to raise government borrowing. So is this something you support? Is this a fiddle-diddle? Is it a way of breaking the rules, do you think?
I'm going to give that line to the Tory opposition to use in Parliament. It's a fiddle-diddle. Jim O'Neill, the sort of Goldman Sachs banker who sort of floats around as the eminence grise for various different governments, but mainly Labour. But he did work
with George Osborne.
Yeah, George Osborne on the Northern Power House. Yeah. He's the sort of guru on this. So if Jim O'Neill says it's OK, it must be OK. I mean, I find these stories quite amusing because, first of all, I have no idea what the fiscal rules are. Luckily, I don't want to be Prime Minister. But
isn't that something
when Andy Burnham refused to say what the fiscal rules were, I looked them up and they were incomprehensible. And they're a sort of political gimmick to say that the government is behaving well. As far as I'm aware, you know, if you spend money on capital, it's accounted for in a different way from day-to-day expenditure by government. And so, because it's counted as investment, because you're creating an asset which adds to the national wealth. It's Keynesian in the sense that you borrow to finance growth. Will it work? I don't know.
The key thing, I think, is whether you invest in things that have guaranteed revenue streams. So, for example, one of the suggestions is that we invest more in building more housing. Yeah. Now, that's going to have a guaranteed revenue stream for the government from that investment. And the test will be, of course, how the markets react in terms of the cost of borrowing. Well, it may well be
the Financial Times
council housing. I mean, there isn't enough council housing, and people pay rent to live in council housing.
Will that produce enough revenue to counter?
You can do it. And I'm actually somebody who's argued that I would, if I were the government, I would invest in building sort of a new affordable rent tenure for young people as well in their 20s to help them move to where the jobs are. That is money that creates a guaranteed revenue stream. Another thing that the government could do is invest through these various, like, you know, the British Business Bank, the National Wealth Fund. Care homes, for example, are another thing that the government doesn't need to get into operating them, but it can build the infrastructure that companies can lease out to run care homes because, you know, again, economists will tell you there is a guaranteed revenue stream from residents living in those homes. So this is stuff there is stuff that it would be very sensible for the government to invest in.
It doesn't mean that borrowing does not go up. And we know that
it doesn't.
Debt is very expensive. It reminds me of, you know, the private finance initiative under Blair Brown, which ended up, when they built hospitals, for example, cost an absolute fortune.
But that isn't borrowing. That was bad borrowing. So what you need is a guaranteed revenue stream that you use to pay. Yeah,
doesn't matter if it's a fiddle diddle on the fiscal.
No, but if you've got a revenue stream coming in, you use that to repay the initial borrowing. Okay. So the real test will be, how does the market react? Does the cost of borrowing go up or not? Yeah. If the markets believe that the government is investing in building homes that are going to be occupied and there is going to be rental income repaid, the cost of borrowing in the market should not go up. So that will be the test.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is still borrowing. You're both right, he says. You'll be pleased to know, he says, patronising.
We should be running the economy, Anna.
It is still borrowing, but, you know, the quote from Jim O'Neill, which I think is on the front page, or supporters of Jim O'Neill, is that, you know, because you're borrowing to invest, the markets do not get spooked. It's not reckless borrowing. It's not Liz Truss borrowing to pay all our electricity bills. You're never going to get that money back. It's borrowing which you will get the money back, so the markets give you a better deal on your borrowing.
OK.
I think.
OK.
Maybe people can text in.
Yeah, exactly. A Treasury spokesperson...
This isn't Times Radio.
Exactly. By tomorrow we'll read them. A Treasury spokesperson, the Chancellor, is fully focused on his priorities to boost business, help with the cost of living and support people in every postcode. As has always been the case, the Chancellor will set out decisions at fiscal events rather than routinely commenting on rumour, speculation or proposals. So that means we've got 6 months of speculation until the next budget, obviously, like we have under Rachel Reeves. More papers coming up after this.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these
are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, welcome back. Taking a look at more of the newspapers with Ed and with Sonia. Telegraph, we know, loves a working from home story, but it's actually a working from beach story this time, Sonia, which is that 1,000 staff at the Bank of England work from the beach, according to the Telegraph.
So the Bank of England has a policy that allows staff to work from abroad for up to 12 days a year. So I guess it means that if you're, you know, travelling or whatever...
That's a different story, actually.
If you've got family living abroad, you might want to go and spend some time with family abroad, and you can work from home from there. Personally, I mean, I think this is obviously a benefit that people working for companies and other organisations doing white-collar jobs may benefit from, just in the same way they benefit from being able to work from home in a way that people in blue-collar jobs don't. Quite frankly, I don't really care where people work from as long as they're doing their work and they're being productive. I mean, it's yeah, it might be a problem if it's 6 months of the year, but come on, it's like literally 12 days a year. So I do feel like, I mean, the Daily Telegraph does just love having a pop at civil servants, at, you know, staff at
as does Jacob Rees-Mogg, who pops up in his quote.
Yeah, and reform as well. So, you know, let's talk about the work that the Bank of England is doing. If we think that they've got problems with the quality of their staff, let's have a conversation about that. I'm not going to lay into the Bank of England for allowing its, you know, some of its staff to work flexibly from abroad for a small proportion of the year. No. Yeah.
I mean, the Times has a great headline at the top for its, you know, lifestyle supplement today, saying, should you wear flip-flops to the office? So I thought to myself, if you work for the Bank of England, you have to wear flip-flops to the office if it's the beach. Exactly. So, but I was thinking, you know, one thought that occurred to me is, you know, first of all, I always treat these stories with a massive pinch of salt, because you're given an inch and you take an absolute mile. So there are 1,000 Bank of England employees at this moment sitting on a beach with a pina colada, you know, deciding what interest rates should be. Don't forget, they're working in a finance institution, and in theory, a lot of those people could probably earn twice, possibly 3 times what they earn in the private sector. So maybe the Bank of England is saying, hold on, we're not going to pay you as much as if you walk down the road and work for a Goldman Sachs, but you will have a better lifestyle. And here are some things that we've thought up which, you know, are attractive to you in terms of your package. And if that means that you can go abroad, as Sonia said, if you've got family living abroad and you can go abroad, but you are going to do a day's work, then perhaps it is actually more productive.
OK.
Hear, hear.
There we are. OK, you both agree on that one. Let's go to the Eye, just quickly. Which is about, it looks like it's more about children's homes.
Yes, yes. So it's about, so there's a huge swathe of children's homes, fostering agencies that are now in the private sector. And private equity-owned companies have got a bigger stake in the children's home sector than ever before. We've seen the same in older care, incidentally. And what you've got is essentially companies, some of them running pretty awful children's homes that are failing their Ofsted inspections, that are looking after some of the most vulnerable children in society, and they are charging local authorities an arm and a leg for it. And, you know, when there's evidence of private equity in some of these markets, it usually goes hand in hand with asset stripping and ripping the taxpayer off as well. So these are just suggestions. Apparently, the iPaper is reporting that officials are saying, you know, that they may be looking at limits on private providers, at the amount of profit they make. But, you know, I've actually written before, we do not let profit-making companies run our schools, run state schools. We don't pay, the state doesn't pay them. Why on earth would we let them run children's homes for the most vulnerable children? That's kind of even worse in my view. So I'd be in favour of getting the private sector out of this sector altogether, personally.
Let's get to the Financial Times, shall we? Just because it's the most extraordinary picture. Never mind driverless cars. This is a pilotless aircraft. The Valkyrie, it looks like, flying over the US's Eglin Air Force Base in Florida this year. We've talked about, you know, the expansion of drones, but this is sort of technology, isn't it? The sleek unmanned vehicles illustrate how recent advances in autonomous flight technology are rapidly challenging the way future aerial battles will be fought. Yeah, well,
this is the future. Don't forget, you know, the horror of the Ukraine war has actually turned Ukraine into probably one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world, and the technology they're deploying, and they've shown that effectively the future of warfare is unmanned vehicles and drone warfare. During this whole debate we had about defence, and you've got to get to 3.5%, I kept sort of screaming, when are we going to hold the defence chiefs to account? Because they commission these billion-pound frigates, which could probably be sunk fairly easily, full of all the bells and whistles, while the Ukrainians are building drones for £5,000 and taking the war to Russia. And the future is to have unmanned vehicles, unmanned drones. It's going to change the nature of warfare. That's what we should be investing in.
I'm giving you 20 seconds for your favourite story, which is about MI6.
Well, I just think you said earlier, Anna, it's all doom and gloom. And here we go. The French have had to admit that we have the best spies. It's not just James Bond, it's MI6. They have had to admit that we have the best spies. It's a French report in a French newspaper. And if I could just speak a little French, they say here, the English, they are good at the dirty tricks. And if the French think we're better at dirty tricks than they are, that is a win.
Shaken or stirred, it's fine by us, isn't it? Yes. Ed Vaizey, Sonia Sodha, thank you both very much indeed, much appreciated. We have the sport next. We'll bring you Ben Stokes' opinion, why Harry Brooks should be England captain. Back in a moment.
Those vivid colours of summer have faded now, but the trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation. We lost 3 of them.
Ruda Cabana's guilty pleas mean they won't have to relive what they saw in court, but everyone here tells you they'll carry it for the rest of their lives. You see people running red lights time after time after time. This is an offence that sometimes has the most awful of consequences.
When you speed through a pedestrian crossing, there is a risk that you could batter somebody to death. She filled our lives with light. She was innocent, she was happy.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
He had a beautiful death. He fell asleep in my arms. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them, quite often, is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa, oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Well, let's catch up with the sport now. Here's Dave.
one big clap. Please do it. Camera sync. Thank you.
An interesting weekend ahead for Dimitar Berbatov. Manchester United reportedly interested.
Nobody's knowing what's going to happen in the future.
Over my dead body, you won't leave Spurs.
You grow impatient. Am I going to miss my moment?
Dimitar's our next target for you, Mr. Levy.
Well, we've made a bit for one player.
Tottenham have reported them to the Premier League for tapping up Dimitar Berbatov.
I didn't feel that we'd done anything that was untoward, really.
Exhausting process. Mentally, it's not good for your mind.
The time is ticking on the final day of this transfer window. Is Dimitar Berbatov going to Manchester United?
Sir Alex is waiting for us. I'm starstruck. Then I find out that City are coming in with the offer.
The noisy neighbours would have been absolutely the noisiest ever.
And I'm like, no, just one club here, we go for United.
Daniel, I think, didn't do himself any favours.
And I took the phone and like, Daniel, please, we had a deal, I'm staying here, bam.
A difficult move is finally only completed just 20 minutes before the deadline.
Oh my God, it's done.
Dimitar Berbatov comes with a hefty price tag, but also an excellent reputation and an impressive scoring record.
What can I say? From year to year, Tottenham got better and better, and I hope when I come here, next year we can play in Champions League.
Let's take you back to your time in Germany. How difficult was that decision to leave there?
I was so used with the city, with the fans, with the people playing good football, great football. But part of life and development of an athlete is that at one point probably he's going to be thinking, is there more? So the moment I start to think about this was the moment then for me it was clear that at one point maybe I needed to make my next step.
My family was married to German people. I played in Bayern Munich, so I followed all these clubs and I knew that Berbatov was the most talented striker there.
It was rumors here and there. My manager was trying to tell me from time to time. So the moment when my agent came in and said, now we have a very serious interest from Spurs, then I was like, all right.
Martinez, the coach, is very good. He said, I know you, you can do well here.
When you are at Spurs and you want a player like Berbatov, is it possible for a club like Spurs to get Berbatov? And he knew that I knew him. I said, you will be a revelation here in this league.
I think over the phone it was maybe a short conversation trying to tell me that I'm his guy for the number 9. He showed the desire that he wants to have me in Spurs.
If you had a conversation with Daniel Levy 1 hour before he spoke to me, he wouldn't have promised.
Dave, thank you. The weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the next few days will bring outbreaks of rain, mainly to the north, with nothing significant expected for the parched south. Britain can expect a mostly fine, warm start tomorrow, but there will be rain in the far north and a few showers elsewhere. Ireland and Northern Ireland will be cooler, with more widespread showers and some more prolonged rain in the north. Northern parts will see further showers tomorrow morning, with more general rain likely over northern parts of Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland for a time. Southern parts, though, meanwhile, will be mainly dry, if rather cloudy, away from the southeast, but there will be a few showers, mostly over the south of Ireland. Cooler in the south and windy for many.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, that was the wrap. Thank you so much for watching. All those top stories coming out right here on Sky News in the Midnight News.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.